In my previous video, I briefly shared a little bit about my current practice and training as a nurse in the operating theater at Beth Israel Mount Auburn Hospital. Today, I want to explain and share my story about my nursing school journey I had from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. In order to give you a better understanding of my journey through nursing, it's important for me to give you some backstory to how it developed and how it evolved. I got my first degree from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill with a Bachelor of Science in Biology. That was in May of 2022. I transferred to UNC Chapel Hill in 2020 through a community college I attended locally, Wake Technical Community College, back in 2018. So I graduated high school in 2018. From 2018 to 2020, I got my associates in arts and science. And then from then on, I transferred over to UNC Chapel Hill, where I completed my Bachelor of Science in Biology in May of 2022. At the time, I was really considering going into medical school in the United States and looking into the American Medical School curriculum. However, as a backup, I also was interested in the nursing career and the nursing profession, because nursing school gives you a very versatile degree that you can use in other disciplines. So I later on made a decision when I got my Bachelor of Science in Biology degree that I didn't want to be trained in an American medical school, and instead I wanted to go and just get a Bachelor of Science in Nursing with a fast-tracked accelerated program. That didn't mean that I was not interested in medical school generally. I still want to apply to medical school in about a year or two, so that's something that I'm still looking forward to doing. It just won't be within the United States. I'm looking into applying elsewhere abroad for medical studies. Anyways, that's a different topic. I want to come back and share with my Bachelor of Science in Biology program. So after I got my Bachelor of Science in Biology degree in May 2022, I didn't have a job lined up because I couldn't use my Bachelor of Science in Biology degree to any of the fields that I wanted to do. For me, in order for me to do things in biology, I would have had to had a PhD in biology, and I wasn't going to go back for another 6 to 10 years doing a PhD in biology just to hopefully get a biology job. I also didn't prepare really well once I graduated. When I graduated, I had no jobs at all lined up for me. I applied to some sales jobs, insurance agent jobs, and travel agent jobs, which I got interviews for. But those are very hard jobs to be self-sufficient and self-sustaining in. And basically, I just ended up doing a trainee part-time job at a company called JuryX. I was being trained on civil cases where it was mostly large healthcare companies, large tobacco companies, and really it was a trial researcher position I applied for. My whole job was to make sure there was no bias within the jury selection, that cases were about specific cases in Florida out of all states. I know it's kind of strange, you having this job in North Carolina, but you are looking at civil suits in Florida. Anyways, that was my job being a trial researcher. I wasn't able to adjust to the requirements in the curriculum, so they had me on a probationary status until I just kind of quit, and I just figured that wasn't going to be for me. So I ended up quitting JuryX around September of 2022. Around that same time, I also had a backup job at Michaels. That was really just a toss-up in terms of applying. I didn't really consider what I'd be getting myself into with Michaels. All I knew is I just needed a job right away with little to no time in terms of the application process and the recruitment as possible. So I ended up just going with Michaels and getting a job there. Looking back on it, Michaels kind of did a good job with my bedside manners and my compassionate care I give as a nurse, but it wasn't a really good job in the sense of me being happy or fulfilled about it. I got paid $12 an hour, and even though I had a bachelor's degree and my managers didn't go to college at all, they were kind of like, bossing you around and telling you what to do. Because education doesn't matter at all at Michaels, you are a cashier and that's what you're going to be doing. And that's a decision I made personally, and I didn't like the atmosphere about Michaels in general. It's just something I had to do to kind of, it was just a job I had to do to get some money. And I didn't like it at all. I remember when I was finished with, especially during the holiday season at Michael's, I was originally a seasonal cashier, but after December going into January of 2023, I became a part-time cashier. And I remember asking my manager at the time if I could get a raise because I was doing a lot of things that the other cashiers weren't, and they were very short-staffed. And my manager said quite point blank that we're not going to give you a raise, but we're going to give you more responsibilities. So that's kind of what it was. Again, during the same time I was doing these two jobs, I was applying to nursing schools for 2023 admission. I applied to one nursing school in Curry College, which is in Massachusetts. I applied to a nursing school in St. Joseph's University, which was in Ohio. And the remaining three nursing schools I applied to were in North Carolina: Winston-Salem State University, Duke University, and my alma mater, UNC Chapel Hill. To my surprise, I got accepted to all of them except Winston-Salem. It's because Winston-Salem canceled their nursing program for 2023, and they were going to move it to 2024. It was a really nice and proud feeling when I found out I got into Duke's nursing school, but I later found out that they would be charging me $100,000 for the 14-month ABSN program they were having, and to me, that was something that I didn't really want to do. So I ended up just leaving Duke. I was going to keep Duke if I didn't get into UNC, and the reason is because I got notified earlier first from Duke that I got accepted to their program, and I was still pending on hearing from UNC's nursing school. Well, I got the update in December of 2022 that I got into UNC's nursing school, and when I found out about that, I was very happy. I was so amazed and impressed, and I declined all the other invitations of the other nursing schools I had, and I automatically went to enroll in UNC. So their program would be starting in May 15th of 2023 for their orientation day, and they were only charging $20,000 compared to Duke's $100,000 for the same ABSN program. So it was a no-brainer that I decided to go to UNC because it doesn't matter where you go for nursing school, you're still going to get paid the same when you finish your education. So again, once I found out I got into UNC in December, it was really just a waiting game. So for the remainder of that time from January until May, I was still at Michael's doing my cashier job. And I did take a few language classes. I took some German classes because I really want to learn German and a few other languages. And I took a few more classes related to pathophysiology and nutrition during the fall semester of 2022. That was prerequisites for other nursing schools outside of UNC. But when I got accepted to UNC, I didn't take any more medical or clinical relevant courses. When I got into UNC's Accelerated Bachelor of Science Nursing program, it is a 14-month ABSN program. It started on the 15th of May, 2023, and it would end on August 6th, 2024. It's divided into 4 semesters. So you had your first summer semester, your winter semester, your spring semester, and then your second summer semester at the very end. And once I found out that I got accepted into UNC, I already had an idea of what the curriculum would be and what it would be like. I continued to, again, be at Michael's. I left Michael's at the first week of May because I was getting ready to transition into my nursing program. I do remember my manager saying that, could we still keep you at Michael's while you're in school? And I said, would I get paid more? And they said no. So I'm like, okay, see ya. That was the only reason I quit Michael's. I just didn't want to be at Michael's anymore once I started nursing school. So I started nursing school at UNC, and the first semester was probably the most difficult in terms of adjusting. A completely brand new schedule. In nursing school, you have your clerkship rotations alongside your didactics. In other programs, they have it separated, but nursing school, it was an integrated didactics and clerkship-based curriculum. So for me, in my first semester, I had Pathophysiology and Pharmacology 1, I had MedSurg 1, my lab, my Clinical Skills Lab 1, my Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion core elective, and then a genetics course. The clerkship was attached to the MedSurg 1 course, and Pathopharm was probably one of the most courses I was initially scared about because that's the course that you That was the most important. It contained all the medications and all the disease processes you would need to know as a nurse. But I found out that I did really good in that class as the test came by, so I didn't really worry too much about it. The only course I almost failed out of was MedSurg 1. I was maybe 1 or 2 percentage points away from having to retake the course and not being able to continue with my cohort. But nonetheless, I still passed, and that's something that I'm kind of proud of in terms of adjusting to this very hard curriculum of MedSurg 1. My clinical skills lab, the first clinical skills health assessment lab, I learned how to take vitals using a manual blood pressure. We did a full physical exam, and then at the very end, we were taught how to insert a urinary catheter. So that was my clinical skills labs for those programs there. The genetics course was pretty much like a biology course, but it wasn't too hard. That course was only given to us on the first and the last 3 weeks of the summer semester. And there was a small project that we all did, and that was a pretty easy course. And then diversity, equity, and inclusion was more of the soft skills of nursing, focusing on self-care and stuff like that. I do remember that one time so there was a paper we wrote in the diversity, equity, and inclusion course, and I got a 45 out of 100. And I was the only student in the cohort that got that low of a grade. And it wasn't because it was a bad paper or anything. It was because I wrote the paper on the wrong topic assignment. And my instructors told me that you need to make sure that whenever you're doing something, you really follow attention, because what if this was like your patient and you didn't follow attention, So it really did kind of give me more discipline and being more aware and alert of what I'm doing. Needless to say, that was a pretty easy course, though. After the first semester ended, we had about 1.5 week break between August. The good news about the first summer was there was nobody at the university. So whenever I had to go study or go somewhere, there was really no student in sight except us. We would mostly stay conglomerated around the nursing school, but I would go to the law school by bike, which is about 5 to 10 minutes bike ride, and go study in there, and there was no one in there, which was really nice. Once we got the winter semester, the second semester started, I took Pathophysiology and Pharmacology 2, the sequel to the first one. I also took Obstetrics and Gynecology, Psychiatry, Clinical Skills and Health Assessment 2, the sequel to the first one, and then a nursing research course, which was a core elective. Again, with Pathopharm 2, because I was already accustomed and equipped with the study habits of the first one, that wasn't too bad of a course, and I ended up getting a really good grade in the second one. Obstetrics and Gynecology was probably the most fun in terms of the second semester, because I was able to see a C-section for the very first time, and I was also able to see a live birth, and it was very procedure heavy, so that was something nice. Obstetrics and Gynecology had a clerkship rotation, and I also had Psychiatry, which we also had a rotation there as well. Psychiatry is a class I almost failed out of because the tests were very subjective. It was super hard to tell which one was the right and wrong answer. And most people that I knew in my cohort were kind of struggling with psychiatry, so it wasn't like I was the only one. I only passed Psychiatry by maybe a few points, and I really give credit to that extra credit quiz I took, which kind of got me over that mark needed to pass the class. If I didn't take that quiz, then I probably wouldn't be able to continue with my cohort. But nonetheless, I did pass Psychiatry. And then for the research class, that was pretty straightforward. It was mostly about writing papers and looking into evidence-based practice. Nothing too crazy there. For the health assessment and clinical skills too, that one was a little bit harder than the first one. That was all about medication administrations, so knowing the medication rights. We had 4 evaluations. The first one was a oral PO medication eval. I had to redo that because I missed one of the med checks. I did good on the IV piggyback and IV push evals, and the last one was a sterile dressing change evaluation, which I had to do the sterile part again. But nonetheless, it was pretty good in terms of the clinical skills. It was very hands-on. For OB-GYN, that was, again, pretty straightforward. The class was really great in the sense that I got to learn more about the pathophysiology and more about the OB-GYN field in general. And the professors really curbed a lot of the tests in OB-GYN. In Psychiatry, they didn't curb it at all. I think that's why a lot of the students kind of got frustrated with them. But nonetheless, I finished the second semester kind of strong. We had a winter break between the winter semester and the spring semester going into January. I had, I believe, 3.5 weeks off. I went to one of my friends' party after our last test, and we were all just kind of enjoying ourselves and just forgetting about nursing school for a second. Because I want to make some more money for the spring semester, I actually went back to Michaels, but it was a different Michaels in a different place. So I ended up doing a full-time schedule during the whole time I was there. So back to back for those 3.5 weeks. I was at Michaels every single day. And what's kind of funny about it is I actually applied to be a framer this time instead of a cashier at Michaels. I got the job as a framer, but because they told me that I was not going to be here for no more than 3.5 weeks, they were going to put me in the cashier because I already had experience in that. So it's kind of weird that I applied for a different job, but they didn't make me do anything of that job at all. I had to go back and do the cashier stuff, which I hated, and stocking and stuff like that. And you can guess it was the holiday season, so very, very tough times at Michaels. But anyways, that was the last time I ever had a job at Michaels once I was finished there. The spring semester was different. So in the first 2 semesters, we really were focused on the didactics. Yes, we had clerkship rotations, but once we were halfway done with the program and we started the 3rd semester, we were really going towards more of the clerkships. So it was becoming less didactics and more of a clerkship model. In the 3rd semester of my nursing school, I had 5 classes, but it was probably the most difficult in terms of the hours you needed to go to the hospital or go to the clinic. In the spring semester, which was from January to May, I had pediatrics, med-surg 2, public health, health assessment and clinical skills 3, and nursing leadership course as our core elective. The leadership course was pretty fun. I kind of enjoyed it. We had discussions with like CEOs of Walmart and like generals of the U.S. Army. It was a super nice course. It really gave you more aspect into the more administrative side of medicine and nursing. So I really liked that class, and I did really well in it. Our health assessments and our labs, so in the first 2 semesters, those were mostly focused on hands-on practical clinical skills. But when we were towards the later half, there was more about the art behind medicine and nursing. So we really focused a lot on issues like systemic racism, bullying, nursing burnout and moral injury, and how to make the healthcare system more equitable to all people. So we wrote a lot of papers, we had panel discussions, we had simulations. We still had days where we went to the clinic. We did a ICU day where we each went to the mock hospital, and we were learning about the process of calling a code in a patient. I was doing chest compressions, and everybody was wearing their scrubs. But overall, it was a different lab and clinical experience compared to the science ones. And then the remaining 3 classes, they all had clerkships on them. So you might be noticing a pattern where every semester you would be more and more into the clerkships and less into the didactics. We didn't have pathopharm anymore in the last 2 semesters, so it was really just focusing on trying to do our best in these 3 other courses we had. Public health was probably my favorite one in the 3rd semester. It really talked a lot about the macro side of medicine and policy making and leadership and how to change a broken system and advocate for more equitable healthcare for all people. And me being a very passionate guy, I focused a lot on policies and policy reform. That was the class I really liked the most. To many others, though, they didn't like public health at all. We went to a recreational center for our public health course, which was different from a hospital, and it was really fun. I really enjoyed going to that center. And then our pediatrics clerkship, we had that. I was surprisingly good with kids in my pediatric clerkship rotation, and I enjoyed it, but it was still like a pediatric floor. And the pediatric lectures were pretty straightforward. It's very similar to OB-GYN. Med-Surg 2, to my surprise, was way easier than Med-Surg 1. I said earlier I almost failed out of Med-Surg 1, but Med-Surg 2, I passed with flying colors. Med-Surg 2 clerkship, though, was one of the worst clerkship experiences in my nursing school. I was in a very bad unit with staff that really didn't care about the students or many of the patients. And my clerkship instructor, she scolded me one time for reaching out to the resident for advocating for a patient when I was just trying to do my job and making sure that the patient had somebody to talk to about a very serious medical concern they were having. And again, I didn't like the unit at all. And I think it's because of that experience, I never ever wanted to go back to the floor, ever go back to med-surg nursing again. But the class was pretty easy and pretty straightforward. I just didn't like the clerkships. On the very last day of clerkship, I was very happy and very fortunate that I passed. I went in there every single day worried about what would happen to me or to the patients in med-surg, because it was a completely bad and very, very horrible unit to be in. I would not wish anybody else to be in that unit. There were some like funny events too in that med-surg 2 course, or in the med-surg 2 clerkship at the hospital. So I remember I was taking care of a patient one time and I was doing his vitals. He had 6 lines on him, on both of his forearms. He had a catheter on him. It was an external catheter. But I remember I was taking vitals and I accidentally tripped over his catheter and it popped out and he was yelling. He was obviously shrieking and shocked by it. I got super nervous because I turned around and I saw urine leaking out on the floor. I went to get my clerkship instructor who was there with me, and I told her, I need some help. I made a terrible mistake. I tripped over someone's catheter. And then my clerkship instructor was like, what the F? And she rushed in. She went in, she looked at me and she said, oh, Abraham, I thought you meant a Foley catheter. This is a external condom catheter. So she wasn't shocked by that, which surprised me. She wasn't upset with me about it. She told me if I was okay, if I needed to get something to kind of calm myself down. We ended up cleaning up the patient. We took care of him. But what's really funny at the end is when I went back to kind of take his vitals later on that day, he was on the phone with his wife, and he was calling me that he was telling his wife that, oh, this doctor, Abraham, he's taking really good care of me. And I'm like, oh, no, I'm not a doctor, sir. I'm a nursing student. And then he told me that, well, I know you had a mishap today with with tripping over the catheter, but actually when I screamed and shrieked, it cleared up my airways, so I was able to breathe better, because he had some pulmonary issues with a lot of mucus buildup in his lungs. And he said, because of that, I'm going to promote you to doctor status. So it was very funny at the end. It was a very rough situation, a very rough story, but it turned out positive at the end, not only for me, but most importantly for the patient. But obviously, I'm not going to be expected to trip over catheters again. That was just a mistake. So that was kind of the story with med-surg 2. And after that, we had graduation was near around May. We had about a week and a half we had about a week and a half break between the third semester and the final semester, which was our capstone clerkship year. That was a semester in which we had the least amount of didactics, and we were basically all just doing our clerkship rotations in the hospital. Originally, I had 2 rotations, so I was going to be at a pediatrics outpatient clinic for the first half of the clerkship, which would be from May to June, and then the latter half would be from June to July. And then for the latter half, I would be in the operating theater doing operating theater stuff. Unfortunately, there was an issue in the pediatric patient clinic, and I think it was an issue more with the clinic itself than me. I went in to go into one of the clinics, and there was a pediatrician in there, and they were doing assessments on the children, and I was curious to see how they were doing assessments to get a diagnosis and make it a learning opportunity. Unfortunately, when I discussed what I saw with my preceptor, which was nothing bad, it was just about what I've seen with their assessments and how I would compare it to my assessments in nursing school. One of them took offense to that and thought I was degrading them or damaging their reputation or criticizing them. And they ended up telling the nurse manager about me not being about me, and they told my faculty that we don't want this guy here anymore. He's just he thinks he's smarter than all of us and stuff like that. And I got notification of that, and that was very unfortunate. I wish it didn't have to be dealt with. It didn't have to be escalated at all. I wish she had. I wish that pediatrician was able to confront me about this, and I would have been able to explain to him what the actual situation was, and we each could have collaborated together to move forward from that issue. But that never happened, and my faculty wasn't mad at me. They were not angry with me. They knew it was a mistake. They wanted me out of that clinic because they don't think it would have been safe for me to continue, because I may have run into that doctor again and he would have been angry with me, or she would have been angry with me based on a complete miscommunication I had with them. I'm very big on accountability and personal accountability. So I know it wasn't necessary, but what I ended up doing was I sent a handwritten apology letter to that physician at the clinic. It was my way of just kind of moving forward from it and recovering from the process, and just being a better and just being more alert and aware of what I say in public. I never got a response back from that clinic after I sent the apology letter, and my faculty told me I didn't need to because it wasn't an issue on my end. It was just they didn't feel safe putting me back in that clinic. But I wanted to clarify with that physician. Whatever they did, I wasn't angry with them. I was trying to learn from them so I can understand their diagnoses and how they would provide care. And I did apologize to them, but never got back. Because of that issue, I didn't really get a lot of my OR days, which I really wanted to in the capstone. So that got shortened by about half. Nonetheless, the OR was great. I loved my OR rotation, and my preceptor there was very supportive and very helpful. And then finally, because they had to cut my OR days, I ended up going to the urgent care facility as like my makeup clerkship for my capstone. The urgent care clerkship was the last clerkship I went to. I learned so much in that outpatient urgent care clerkship. It was really nice, very procedure heavy at times too. It was basically the equivalent of a step down version of the emergency department. But I was able to apply a lot what I learned in nursing school, and my preceptor was really proud with what I was doing. She just wanted me to make sure that whatever specialty I'm in, just to make sure to get acclimated to it and used to it, and always just learn to change. And she gave me very good, honest feedback. And I did thank her at the end. I didn't mention this, but in addition to the capstone clerkships, I took my clinical skills and health assessment 4 class, and then I had my elective, which was my oncology course. That was just a lecture with no clerkship attached to it. After all the clerkships and classes were over, we took our final examination on the 29th of July. It was a very low stakes assessment. It was just an exit exam for a third party company that promised us we would do really well in the NCLEX, but it didn't really do a good job at preparing me for the NCLEX. So we took it. Before we took the exam, there was a final potluck everybody had. So there was so basically there was a final kind of party and a dinner where all the faculty would come. They had a faculty rewards day, and one of my friends, he was the only guy in the cohort that was part of the honors program. So he did a honors project, and he presented all of that to us before we took our exam. And after that, we were done. We left. We got our BSN degree and our final grades on August 6th of 2024. And for me, by that time, I was already looking at jobs. And that was it. That was my BSN. So it was 14 months. Overall, I liked the program. I was really good with it in terms of time management. I never had an all-nighter. I never crammed. I got 8 hours of sleep every single night. And because of these good study habits and these good time management skills I had, and smart study habits, mind you, I was able to do really good in nursing school. It helped me develop my social skills, my psychosocial skills, my assessments, what's urgent, my prioritization skills. It helped me with a lot of clinical skills. And it also made me a better person. I forgot to mention, in the final semester of my nursing school, the 4th class I took wasn't a capstone clerkship. It was a global health course, which is similar to the public health course I took in the 3rd semester of the nursing school, but instead of focusing on public issues in the United States, it focused on public health issues across the world. Nonetheless, it was an excellent course, and I really enjoyed that one in addition to the public health course. I appreciate everybody who was able to listen to my journey of nursing school, my journey to get into nursing school, the nice memories I had, and the unfortunate occurrences I also had, and also kind of what lies for me ahead in the future, and that I am planning on other major goals. Take care and cheers.